Hello from Ireland. Akash Deep. Hello, how are you? Thank you, Akash Deep. Really appreciate. Good morning to all of you. Hope you're enjoying your holiday, your Sunday with your family, with your friends. Good morning. So, Akash Deep says the video in which you mentioned about no motivation resonates with me a lot. Which video was it? I don't even remember it myself. But yes, this the root of motivation is important. The last one, okay. The root of motivation, if it is based on thinking, which is like I have to achieve this, I have to become that, then that can be a never-ending trap. But if the motivation simply comes from the working mind, that work is done for its own sake, rather than just you become the activity that you're doing. So I'm glad that the video resonated with you. Feel free to ask questions. I'm here for you, and feel free to ask anything, to share anything. Please go on, ask any question. Somebody is saying, can I ask question related to Bhagavad Gita? Well, you can ask, but please know that I'm not an expert on Bhagavad Gita. So I don't know if I'll be able to answer it or not, but I will do the best to my ability. So you can go ahead and ask. I generally take verses from all scriptures, from Bible, from Bhagavad Gita, from Ashtavakra Gita. But I only take that which I feel is relevant to what I'm discussing in a given moment. Okay, let me see if I can answer this. In chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, verse 22, Sri Krishna said, soul transferred to one body to another. But in verse 24, Sri Krishna said, soul is omnipresent. So it is no contradictory. Okay, from what I understand about this, Krishna is talking to Arjun at two different levels. Krishna is assessing what emotional state Arjun is during Bhagavad Gita, because don't forget that he's in a battlefield, and the whole objective of Krishna to explain Bhagavad Gita to Arjun is so that the karma that he's supposed to do, he should do it. So yes, Krishna is in one verse he is talking about soul gets transferred from one body to another, but in another verse he says soul is omnipresent. So what he's saying, the nature of the soul is omnipresent. That which is omnipresent manifests as the soul, the limited soul, the limited, say, subtle body. But what the subtle body or the causal body is made up of is pure consciousness. So try to understand that Krishna is trying to assess Arjun's psychological state because he has to fight a war. And Krishna is very clear about this in Bhagavad Gita, where he says that you are born a warrior and you have to fight. But he is having an emotional conflict because his relatives are on the other side. So he is going from one level to another level. First, he tells him that the soul migrates from one body to another body, like changing clothes. But then he goes on to explain the real nature of the soul, the ultimate nature of the soul. So the first objective was to inform Arjun that what you think you are killing cannot actually die. And in the end, he is telling Arjun that the very nature of soul is indestructible, which is pure consciousness, which is omniscient, omnipresent consciousness that we are. So there are two levels here, and he is giving, it is not contradictory, it is just two different levels of explanation. Okay, so Saundarya says, how can we stay physically active while remaining centered and calm without feeling lethargic or inactive? When I am still, I experience strong palpitations, which can be quite frightening. So first of all, if one is experiencing very strong physical sensations, then one has to be very practical about it. First of all, do get a physical checkup done to rule out any structural cause for for anything that is happening. Now, when you have ruled that out and you are quite sure that it is psychological in nature, then you try to understand what is the source, what is the root of that fear, where is it coming from? Because behind every fear that produces physical symptoms, there is an underlying story. And sometimes it is in conscious, but sometimes it is in the unconscious. But it produces quite strong feelings. So if you are aware of that, then a lot of those sensations can dissolve over time. Now, I would say is to be sahaj in this process, is to not take very hard activities, but to go very slow. I'll just give you an example. There was a time when I would feel very nervous writing an essay of 1,000 words. 1,000 words essay was too much for me, and I would experience breathlessness and a lot of anxiety trying to write. So what I did, I did not fight with it. I just centered myself and I said, I'm just going to write 100 words. My objective for the day would be just to write 100 words and nothing more, not even a word more. So when I did that, somehow the mind was convinced that, okay, he's just going to write 100 words and then he'll do something else or whatever he likes. But I ended up writing 300, 400, sometimes the whole essay too. So this is how, one can, the idea is to go slow, is to go in a relaxed manner and not hurry into things and not take overwhelming tasks on oneself. Don't take too much on yourself. Just, in fact, undertake. If you've planned out 10 things, start with only 2 first. And then you will experience that the symptoms will not be that strong. And once the symptoms are not that strong, you can, a little bit of resilience is will be needed, but you will have the energy to go through those two, and you will definitely feel better after completing the two tasks. Okay. Akash Deep says, I am 28 and I got awake in a very unique way. I stopped doing basic things like eating well for a while, as mind says to eat, and I lost a lot of weight too in this process. My question is, do we have any free will to even think, or it's always the mind minding? Well, now my personal concept on this is mind will always do the minding, but be with that is aware of the mind's minding. That which is aware of everything, of every movement, including what we call as the mind, is always free. It doesn't have an agenda. It doesn't think in terms of good and bad. So for the person, my concept is that there is no free will. And the person is a programmed entity that acts and reacts according to psychological conditioning that one has received in the past. So it is a function of two things. One is the genetics, and second is the conditioning, the programming. Now, it is not to say that the programming cannot change. The programming can change, therefore, one must, if one feels that one can do better, one must at least give some weight to that, must at least try, give it a try. Never start with an assumption that I'm not supposed to do this or do that. Just go in the process. And yes, after awakening, these things happen. Eating patterns, some people may gain weight, some people may lose weight, some people may experience a lot of anxiety, heightened emotions, because we think that awakening is going to free us from all the troubles, but actually the container, when the container clears out, the mind, the container, when it clears out, every emotion, feeling, sensation is felt in complete intensity, full intensity. So actually it can be quite overwhelming for some time. Eventually the mind settles down and gives up the idea that it has any personal free will of its own. And that is the true surrender. When that surrender happens, the biological organism that we identify as me becomes spontaneous. That means relaxed. So, like I was explaining the earlier question about doing things, it won't matter if we do 10 things in a day or 2 things in a day. Whatever we do, we will be completely immersed in it and spontaneous, because there will only be the working mind that is concerned only with the process of creating or doing the task, whatever needs to be done, and not the thinking mind, which is always concerned with what the outcome should be. Another question is, hello, I'm struggling from long COVID for 2 years and I'm having difficulty in feeling happiness. For me, the physical issue itself is a suffering apart from emotion and stories. Any help? After COVID, I can share a personal struggle of mine. After COVID, I started experiencing lower back pain, and there was nothing wrong structurally because I got everything, all the imaging done, and I went to so many physiotherapists and so many other. I did a lot of yoga, but still my back would remain tight and it would pain, and sometimes it was even difficult for me to get up and walk. But at some point, I just did not pay much attention to it. So I disconnected the part where the physical suffering was connected to my psychological state. And I would say that this is one thing that I'm not going to let mess up with my mind, because mind comes up every time. Oh, this again, it's hurting again, and it's the same loop over and over again. And well, there are some studies, there are some people who have worked on this, where they say that the brain forms associations, and the body, the nervous system learns certain patterns, because of which even when there is no problem, it starts manifesting suffering, thinking that the problem is actually happening right now. Now I can understand that your uh, challenge, the physical challenge, may be there, and yes, sometimes it is there. All I can say is, do whatever you feel is in your best interest to address the physical issue. Whether it is any form of treatment, do not ever assume that the treatments are useless, or that just go with your instinct, and whatever you feel is going to help you in a given moment, do that. Definitely try it out. But yes, when your mind starts creating stories and emotions around it, then try to trace the source of it. Like, why, what exactly is underneath those stories? And if you are aware enough, you will see that these stories have a pattern. You know, there is a certain type of stimulation that would happen in the body, and all of a sudden a story related to that particular stimulation will come up, right? For example, in my case, when there was lower back pain, anger would arise all of a sudden, an irritation and anger, and it would be like, oh my god, this again, you know now I won't be able to do this, I won't be able to do that. How will I go? How will I go to work? How will I do the whatever I'm supposed to do? But when I surrender completely to it, and I'm like, okay, if this is it, if I just have to lie down today and rest, or maybe the next 2 3 days I just have to lie down and rest, then so be it. Yes, it's going to affect my work. Yes, it's going to affect other things in my life. But then what can be done about it? If it is what it is. So when we completely surrender to it, we see that most of the psychological issue gets addressed. So I would only say, just watch these stories and emotions and see how they are playing their part, and you will see their illusoriness. You will see that they are not really what they appear to be in a given moment. Okay, Akash Deep says, can resonate. My mind is very calm. Thought seems very far, but mind is confused. If I can think, well, Akash Deep, mind's nature is to be confused. Its nature is to cause confusion. Let it do whatever it's doing. Let the confusion be there. Don't try to fight the confusion. Don't try to clear the confusion. Just I think in the video yesterday, I spoke about a teaching from Nisargadatta Maharaj, where he says that just like a cloth, when kept in um when kept in a soapy water, gets clean by itself. So is the mind. When it rests in the pure emotion, it gets clean by itself. without one trying to. So yes, let the mind do. Yes, you're right. Don't fight or try anything. Just let it be. Just let it be. Okay, so we have a question. What is the difference between observing and witnessing? There is awareness of thinking most of the times in my case. Is that metacognition observing? Thank you. Well, yes. Well, you know, the concept is that observing requires an observer. So observation, or sometimes I also distinguish between observation and pure observation, which is witnessing. But observation is usually done from the separate self. So when the observation is happening from the separate self, it is usually distorted, limited. So, witnessing on the other hand is complete acceptance of whatever is happening. There is no movement in witnessing. So witnessing is not personal. Observation is personal. So witnessing, the analytical mind is not running in the witnessing. This is right, this is wrong. All those filters are gone. While observation is quite narrow, it can happen with a certain filter in mind. That if things are this way, then it is fine. If things are not this way, then it is not fine. And witnessing has a quality of relaxation, deep relaxation. Especially sometimes you must have noticed this when you get up in the morning and you open your doors or windows and you're just looking at the scenery and you keep looking at the scenery and you sort of feel a oneness with whatever there is. Now a lot of things may be happening in that scene. Some animal may be eating a smaller animal, or insect maybe dying or being crushed, but everything appears beautiful, everything appears calm and relaxed, perfect the way it is. There is no judgment, we are not even saying that it is amazing or it is, but we're just feeling a quality of calmness, a quality of tenderness in our heart. That is witnessing, because that is not done through the vision of the separate self. It is only the observation, the analysis that is done with the separate self. Thank you very much for your words coming from your own lived experience. Yes, there are patterns that come up when I have physical issues, most of them being the frustration of not being able to do. Yes, yes. And I do I do agree with the fact that it can be quite debilitating and quite frustrating. So we are not trying to avoid that. Like, we are not saying that that should not be. All we are saying that yes, that is the reality in a given moment. So certain physical issues can be very strong, and they can arrest um, the mind's movement They can restrict the mind movement to a very small area where one experiences same thoughts over and over again. Like, why me? Not this again. Why do I have to do, why, it can just keep bringing up the same thoughts over and over again. Now, one can certainly try and, mm, try to extend, if possible, if in consultation with a physician or someone or a loved one or a caretaker, one can certainly try and to do as much activity as is comfortably possible for oneself, or maybe try out something different, you know something that does not require too much physical work. So that could be like reading, or these days with technology it's easy to write also, where you can simply hold the phone and dictate and write an article. So from my personal lived experiences, that sharing has helped me a lot. Some, even when I was in difficult situation physically, with struggling with the physical ailments, sharing with people did help a lot. And sometimes there are emotions trapped within the body in the form of stress, and they take their time to process. I mean, we just patiently have to wait sometimes to let them release. But they will release, because it is the nature. The nature of energy is movement. So even the emotion is energy. Even this, even what we call as stress or tension is energy. So its nature is movement. So it is going to move. It is never going to be the same. You see, this whole this whole thing about life, that everything changes, is both a curse and a blessing at the same time. Okay, Akash Deep says, Sir, can a soul incarnate in two bodies simultaneously? Like first born in 1996, second born in 2000, both like separate lives. I don't know, Akash. I really don't know. I can only speak what is my lived experience. Other than that, everything else will be a theory. So yes, theories, there are many theories that I can give you, but I would like to keep it as real as possible. I don't know, maybe that is possible, but I don't really know. So Missy says, things that I love. I know is a thought, but on a relative level, I want a pleasurable life so badly. Yes, yes, that's what many of us want, a pleasurable life so badly. But Missy, tell me one thing. What has taught you most in life? The pleasures or the pain that you experienced? My experiences, lived experience, that only pain has taught me most in life. Even though it was extremely painful and it caused suffering for years and decades, but what brought my growth, what brought me closer to truth, is not a pleasured, comforted life, but a life that was where the suffering was there. Now, I don't say that you have to seek suffering. Just that's not the point here. The point is that, like Nisargadatta Maharaj says, that the search for the pleasure itself brings pain. So, in this given moment, do your best to do, to make the best out of this situation, whatever you can do. But accept the fact that despite everything, things may take time. Yes, nothing remains constant, but things may take time. My awakening started when I met a girl and the mind went million miles per hour. Of course, but natural when you meet a nice girl, the mind goes million miles per hour. And if that doesn't happen, then there is something wrong. Thinking about her, I barely knew her. Yes, it can happen. Yes, this can happen. Sometimes, sometimes we meet people and they can, they can just, be on our mind all the time, and the mind can race. It can happen. But yes, awakening is not pointing to that. The awakening is pointing to the space where all of this observation or witnessing is happening. As Nisargadatta Maharaj said, that don't bother about the experience, but see the background in which the experience happening. Okay, looks like I missed the response to my question. So I think your question was about observation and witnessing. So I will just quickly repeat that. So observation is the person's observation, the observation from the limited filters of the separate self, whereas witnessing is impersonal in nature. In witnessing, there is no good or bad or filtering anything. It is simply direct observation of what is. And there is a quality of calmness, quality of peace to witnessing as opposed to observation, which is usually heavy emotionally. So Akash Deep says, mind still thinks about her maybe 100 times a day, but it's better now, 2 years now. Yes, let the mind do whatever it's doing. This message will not tell you how to improve the mind, because improving the mind is a skill, and a lot of things can be done to calm the mind, like yoga, meditation, pranayama, kriya. There are so many things. But yes, they all work temporarily. And they are good. I recommend them. I do them myself. I will never say that the kriyas are bad or that these things are useless. No. Do all these things have amazing benefits. But yes, the fundamental peace will not come from any of the practices, but mind pointing to its source, mind inverting on itself and pointing to its source. So even let's say when we get separated from the people who we love, it can so happen that the mind may experience sadness every now and then. But that sadness is also accepted, and there is a peace to it also. So I have a comment. Thank you for your deep sincerity in sharing your and other masters' teaching. I find your approach deeply empathetic and personal, and meeting the modern man where he is. It is effortlessly accessible when I hear your words. My question to you is that, having had glimpse of the truth and the realization that such a state or way of living exists, my whole being is after seeking that since the glimpse has happened. Even if I intellectually accept the idea that the seeking has to drop, and reality is absence of any experience at all. Yes, that happens too. And I would say that let it happen if that's happening. You know, there is a Sufi mystic. Now I'm forgetting his name. I think it is Bastat or something like that. I'm forgetting his name, mispronouncing his name also. He says that seeking does not lead to what is being sought, but without seeking, one never finds it. That is also true. So it's a, you know, I don't know if you call it oxymoron, it's like that. So the seeking will happen till it is destined to happen for this mind body organism that you call as me, and let it happen. We cannot stop it because we never started it. The seeking started and the seeking will stop on its own. At some point, the chase for the glimpse, to get the glimpse again, will drop away. And you know, it is but natural that the glimpse of truth is so beautiful that once seen, you just want to grab hold of it and make it your permanent state. But that is the separate self. It is not meant to be like that. Till we are in this realm, in duality, this is in this realm we are supposed to live, interact, and you know the life has to happen the way it is happening. So, but yes, the light, the pure light that is making all of this happening, that is always there. It is omnipresent, and you know, as we call it, omniscient, omnipresent. And that glimpse, when it happens, it does change a lot of it changes a lot of things. So I would say what Ramana Maharishi said, that your head is already in the tiger's mouth, and it's just a matter of time, relatively speaking, that the tiger cuts it off. So Missy says, thank you very much. I will try to be patient and accept what is. Hope that in hindsight I would be able to say that this challenge brought me insight and wisdom. Yes, Missy, it will. It will. All these experiences, they teach us. And we keep getting these experiences unless the lesson is learned. Now, again, this is all relative. This is all speaking relatively. If you right now radically accept that you are the pure consciousness and not this mind and body that you think you are, then all of the suffering associated with it drops away instantly. This realization is not dependent on time. It is not a function of any practice or trying. It is simply accepting what is. Accepting what is does not require time. And I sincerely hope that you feel much better physically and emotionally, and that you be in a position where you can experience a lot of peace. That is my sincere wish for you. If I engage in meditation, something in me tells me that it is prolonging the journey by creating a goal out of it. Exactly. Exactly. That can be a trap. Now, meditation is not done. Meditation is something that happens. I personally believe that it does not require one to sit in specific postures. Now, if you are flexible and if you can sit comfortably in a lotus posture, then by all means do that. Other than that, just bringing attention to here and now in itself is meditation, is the highest meditation. And till the mind is seeking some state, or it has fixated itself on a goal, then it is again, it's just like teaching the mind a skill. You know, some people learning a skill, but again, the moment you get out of meditation, the mind will create turbulence because it has learned to be quiet for 8 hours since you taught it that. But then you get up, go about in the world, and again it comes up with all the nuisance that it wants to do, throwing thoughts here and there. This is not right, that is not right, this is not happening this way, that is not happening that way, it keeps going on and on and on and on. So yes, Nisargadatta Maharaj would say the road is the goal. There is no goal post here. There is nothing to achieve or attain. You are free this instant. You are realized this instant. Right now, it is not a function of time. It is not that if you meditate for long hours, what you do is you learn a skill, you become a better meditator. And becoming a better meditator does not free us. It does not bring peace. On the contrary, it can strengthen the sense of separateness. And I'm speaking from experience. We may think that some people who meditate for long hours must have no ego, but it can be exactly the opposite. When the mind is not allowed to flow, it keeps collecting the arsenal in the unconscious. And then at some point, it just blows everything into the conscious. Some of you will relate to what I'm saying. If I try, so the comment is, if I try to not do anything, the constant urge to seek, which has been conditioned into me, I feel is still in the background. I'm waiting for something to happen in a subtle way. It is still waiting and craving for an experience or some insight to come. So in essence, it is no worse or better than meditation, a goal-oriented approach. And if I just let it be, there is still underlying current that wants something out of this letting things be. The wanting of the absolute persists endlessly. Is this longing mind wanting to achieve a superlative state? And does the mind need the goal-oriented approach because it has no choice but to do that? And eventually the journey ends in disappearance of the mind and seeking. Well, it can happen in multiple ways. Sometimes it can happen that way, that the mind keeps trying to attain a state, and all of a sudden, at some point, it realizes that actually there is nothing to attain. There is no state, and all there is this. So I can just share my own experience in this, that I was now my enlightenment or being enlightened was never my goal at any point in my spiritual journey. I didn't even know what enlightenment means. I still don't know what that means actually. The only goal was to calm my mind, to operate so that I can operate in the world efficiently. That was my only aim, because my mind was running so fast that it was becoming difficult for me to do some basic tasks that are required for life and living. So at some point, I did a lot of meditation and other things, but at some point I just realized that all of this doing is just strengthening the separate self. And that realization itself just dropped the seeking, and I didn't feel the need to move at all. I was just enjoying myself. I was being spontaneous. I was doing whatever I felt like in a given moment without worrying about right and wrong. And to this day, it goes on like this. I say what I feel is necessary in a given moment without worrying about right and wrong, or who I will offend or who I will not offend. In any case, many people's minds are so sensitive that they can even take any comment of mine and be offended by that. That happens all the time in the world. So I would say that observe what is happening here. This is called the classical mind's entanglement. Is it this? Is it that? Is it going to happen this way? Is it going to happen that way? Just try to be with that root that is creating this anxiousness about attaining some superlative state or an absolute experience. Just be with that and see if there's any truth to that. At some point, you will realize that that's not the constant experience. The seeking happens sometimes, and sometimes when you are completely relaxed and calm, there's just no worry about any seeking. When we are happy, we are content, we don't seek then. So seeking is not the ultimate truth. Seeking is an illusion because seeking is not present all the time. It's not happening all the time. Seeking is not happening in deep sleep. Seeking happens in waking state, and only and especially it happens when we are troubled, emotionally troubled, when there is a charge, emotional charge, and we are so tired. We don't want to feel that emotional charge, and the mind just comes up with this and that idea that somehow if I get it, if I become liberated, if I become free, somehow it's just going to change my life. I'm going to be happy. There won't be any problems. But the change is the basis of duality. So accepting duality, accepting the change or what is the true freedom, liberation. Other than that, there is no state that can be permanently sustained here. Okay, so there is a comment which says, Joe says, so observing could still carry guilt or shame, however subtle it may be. Yes, when the observation is done through the separate self, it is narrowing every perception through the filters of shame, guilt, malice, resentment, and sometimes it can be very, very subtle. And the only way to know that is that you won't be at peace when that observation is happening. There will be sensations, strong sensations in the body, indicating that this is narrow. And the mind will be constantly trying to move here and there. Let me change it this way, let me do that. That is all the limited observation. Now, this this limited observation, the intellectual observation, also does help in practical matters in daily living. Now, for example, let's say if somebody is physically violent to you, then that observation is required. That observation, that mind, discerning mind, will give you the right steps to protect yourself. It is a practical situation that is happening. And so, in a given moment, the observation that happens from the limited mind will help you to protect yourself, to protect your peace, and that is why it happens. That is why it is there. But let's say after the situation is over and you are free from the influence of that person who is physically abusive, if your mind again comes up with, what if I again get into this situation? What if again they say horrible things about me? What am I going to do then? So all that rumination that is happening based on a past experience and which is projecting an imaginary future, where it is saying, what if this happens again to me? What if my first relationship was not good? What if my next relationship is also horrible? All that projection from from the separate observer, that is not happening in the given moment. It's not happening now. It's just a movement. That is illusion. That is when it is seen that that is an illusion and it is just mind making its movement, that is witnessing. Because then your concern with it drops away and you will experience an ease. So you will say that, yes, it happened this way, and my mind is still moving in this direction, and it is still projecting an imaginary future, you're going to see it. Everything will be seen actually. So in witness, things are seen not by you, but by the awareness that you are. Your awareness by itself is pure knowing. Its nature is knowing. That means knowing that is unfiltered, undistorted. Okay, so there is a comment. I met a girl 2 years back just for 1 week when she came to my office for work. She was my manager. So no way I was thinking of dating her in reality. Mind went wild since then. Now it's okay. I will be glad if you can explain this because internet says she's the same soul. I don't believe in anything. Now language is just mix of sound to me if you can resonate. Well, I can only speak in terms of desire. So there may be a strong desire, to be with someone, and it can happen, and especially when we are young, that does happen a lot. And one can feel very strongly about a certain things. Now, I do not know if it is the same soul or the different soul. I do not talk about it because right now it has not been my experience. But if it comes into my experience, then definitely I will talk about it. The only thing I would say is that anytime the mind creates a fantasy about an imaginary future, there is trouble. It is usually anxiousness, sleeplessness. It is usually restlessness, anxiety, basically. Because then you find yourself now in a very different situation, and your projection of an imaginary future where you may be with this woman, dating her and living a very happy life, you see that there is a gap between that dream, and your mind is constantly bent on making that dream come true, and it'll try to convince you that if that happens, if the vision comes true, then you will be happy. All the masters have said is that your happiness doesn't depend on any movement. You can be happy here and now. Even when you may be having no one, you can be happy here and now. Yes, one does experience a certain sense of loneliness being alone. That is true, that is there, but one can also feel lonely in a relationship too. In the best relationships also, one can feel lonely. That is a part of human conditioning and human nature. So I don't assign concepts to it, like if it is the same soul or if it is the same soul family. Maybe that is true. I don't really know. But I try to keep things very, very simple. That what is destined is going to happen, and what is not destined will not happen. In words of Ramana Maharishi, try try whatever you want to, but what is only that will happen that is destined for you, and that kinds of brings peace for me. So Puniti says, can spiritual awakening happen to anyone anytime, or are there any particular steps to reach the experience? Please elaborate. Thank you. And I feel that spiritual awakening can happen to anyone anytime. I mean, of course, when we say awakening, we are using a concept. So yes, there is an experience, but it is a realization that there is no experiencer, there is simply experiencing. The only thing that one needs to investigate is that who is trying to use any step or practice to attain an experience, because whatever is gained will also be lost. So, the masters have pointed only to the truth, which is that which is your most intimate experience, I am. That alone is the truth, because that is never lost. I hope that helps. Okay, Karnataka. Namaste Jagjot, thank you for all your videos. I do have a question. Do you think that sharing about your spiritual progress with others could be a detrimental thing as reinforcing our egos? Thank you. Okay, it can happen. It can happen, but one should not assume that it will happen. You see, generally, from my own experience, that sharing of any kind, when it is done, when it is done with heart, okay, where one is not looking for any kind of a reward, but simply because the body mind instrument has to facilitate the impersonal energy to flow, then it doesn't usually lead to reinforcing our egos. In fact, on the contrary, it can happen the other way around. I have seen when people sit in meditations for very long and or sit with some preconceived ideas for very long, they start believing that can reinforce the ego too. For example, if I start affirming consistently that I am the consciousness, the pure consciousness. Now, these are pointers given by the masters. When master is giving a pointer, their objective is not to, they're not particularly concerned with your liberation. They're just sending it out, you know. It's like throwing, you know, throwing sweets and anybody can catch it, right? Whoever is destined to catch it will catch it. It's just like that. So sometimes what happens when you keep repeating an affirmation that I am consciousness, even when you're struggling internally, it can sort of becoming a bypassing method, which can actually reinforce the ego. The ego can step through the back door and keep saying that, because I am consciousness, I can say anything or do anything. And there won't be consequences for me because there is no me. So yes, it can use the concept. The ego can use the concept that way too. But generally, when the sharing is done with the heart, where one expresses vulnerability, it usually does not lead to reinforcing the ego. I hope that helps. Okay, Puniti says, how to navigate that I am going in the right direction. I did Vipassana some time back and find it helpful, but beyond a point I felt directionless. Please guide. Well, again I said, point to who is the practitioner and why is the practice being done. That needs to be investigated. If the practice is being done to attain an outcome, one needs to look at what is the desired outcome. There is a desire underneath, that is a force which is, pulling you in a certain direction. Investigate that desire. Like, what desire is that? How did you decide that Vipassana would help you? You must have heard it from someone. And Vipassana is a beautiful, beautiful practice. It brings a lot of insight. That's why it is also called insight meditation. But yes, as I said earlier, when the meditation is over, because Till the mind is active in meditation, meditation is not happening. When the meditation is over, the mind comes back. So one has to, one has to see what exactly is happening here. Like, what is my primal desire? Why do I want it? Do I really want it? Was that my seeking when I was a child? Or was I conditioned to believe that there is some state which is going to give me something that others do not have, or which is somehow going to make my life better? That needs to be investigated. How can you be both? There is a question. How can you be both successful in spirituality and life situation? The short answer to this question is by seeing that spirituality and life are not two different things. What we differentiate as spirituality is not separate from life. The movement of life is spirituality. So I will give you just one pointer, which was given by Ramesh. I don't talk in terms of success and failures because those are all relative concepts, but I will tell you how to make life harmonious. And Ramesh would say unconditional acceptance of what is. That is the highest spirituality. The flow of the acceptance, not the acceptance of, hold on. Ramesh Palsekar said, don't find happiness in the flow of life, but in your attitude towards life. So unconditional acceptance of what is. That means life's unaltered and unpredictable flow. What is life's unaltered and unpredictable flow. Finding peace in that is spirituality. Okay, so the next question is how to find peace. Is acceptance of the situation the only way? Well, I think I have answered that question. Unconditional acceptance of what is. Gopi PV, what is mind? I am still trying to find out what is mind, sir. I haven't been able to find. What is mind? Thought, I will just say this, thought produces the notion of a container. The thought, which can be intensity, which can be a feeling, sensation. It is usually a sensation. Now we give it divisions like this is feeling, this is emotion, this is different type of emotion, that is another type of emotion. But at the root, everything is just sensation, just pure sensation. So sensation creates the notion of a container that we call mind. But in reality, there is no container because everything is just made up of awareness. The more we try to find out what mind is, the more entangled we get into the mind's game. So another question is how to continue to do good and be good if we receive negativity, jealousy, hatred, etc. from society. I feel that we cannot turn off our mind as long as we are in the society. Well, no, you cannot turn off your mind. And who says that there is a need to turn off the mind? Any spiritual teaching that teaches you to turn off the mind, will not agree with that at all. Mind is a potent tool. Mind is required for basic life and living. But do examine this question. Do examine this question, your question, where you say, if we receive negativity, jealousy, hatred, etc. from society, count the number of times you have received negativity, jealousy, hatred from the society, and count the number of times when people were actually nice to you, kind to you. Now, unless you are really in a very, very tough environment, like a prison or, you know, or in a coal mine where people can be quite, you know, physically exhausted and emotionally challenged, in the normal process of daily living, it is just the mind which comes up with this idea that the world is negative, full of jealousy and hatred. But if we see how many instances has happened where people were unkind or negative, are one needs to examine this. Don't come to abrupt conclusions on this. Just examine this. Are people really negative, or is it my mind that is interpreting people's voice in a particular way through its own filtered conditioning? And regarding the first part of your question, how to continue to do good and be good, that is the recipe for living a miserable life. To try to do good is a recipe to living a miserable life. Try to be good is a recipe to living a life of pain and suffering. The Bhagavad Gita says you can neither do a good deed nor an evil deed, because you are not the doer. The ego deluded thinks of itself as the doer. Forget about the world. Just come back to this instrument, me. What is this instrument? How do I feel is most important than how do others feel. When I say others, I include everyone in that, even the most intimate relationships like parents, spouses, children, everybody. Forget about them. For a moment, just think about how do I feel when you are completely present with yourself, completely, totally present with yourself. Do you ever experience any turbulence? Usually we do not feel any turbulence. It is only when the mind tries to flow outwards with the belief that the world is a bad place and people are bad, then our mind is constantly filtering each and every statement, and it creates a world, it creates a bubble, it creates dark clouds that cover the sunshine. So challenge that belief, and then automatically you will see the question will be answered. You only perceive the world the way you feel about yourself inside. So when we feel bad about ourselves inside, that is how we start projecting on the world. This is what has been said in the verse 170 in Viveka Chudamani by Adi Shankara, that the phenomenal world is a projection of the inner self, the separate self. All right, I think we will conclude for now. And if there are any questions that I have not been able to answer, you can always email them to me, or you can always join the Zoom satsangs if you wish to. We hold them on weekends. I wish you a great weekend and a very pleasant day. Take care, all of you.